Few sights are more impressive than the northern approach into San Francisco. The looming towers of the Golden Gate Bridge suddenly rise over Highway 101, orange giants spanning the watery gap that divides San Francisco Bay from the Pacific Ocean. From the famous Fisherman's Wharf teeming with tourists to the frenetic bustle of Union Square, the city is a glittering symbol of the spirit of American enterprise, of what good can be made from the collective will to succeed. Yet cradled within the heart of the Golden City is a dismal reminder of what happens to those disenfranchised unfortunates who run afoul of American society, of those poor and often malicious souls who cannot or will not live by the laws of the land. It is Alcatraz, the crumbling and abandoned prison that juts out of San Francisco Bay underneath the storied bridge. Even today, long after the last criminal did his time in the utter isolation of the infamous jail, one can sense an undeniable foreboding emanating from Alcatraz Island. People felt this apprehension about the Rock long before it was designated a federal prison. Long ago, well before San Francisco was founded, the first Miwok Indians who cast their eyes on the small island decided to steer clear of it, feeling that the pelican-covered rock was evil. The prehistoric account includes no events that corroborated the Miwok premonitions. Alcatraz's eventual role as America's most notorious prison would justify these early Indians' ancient fears. From 1934 until 1963, some of the most hardened criminals in the United States served time in the renovated maximum security prison. The walls of Alcatraz, as it was called by inmates, were impenetrable, and even if resourceful convicts were able to get through prison security, the cold, choppy waters of the bay provided a final, virtually insurmountable barrier. And while incarceration is a difficult ordeal wherever a prison might be located, the fact that many inmates had windows that opened onto the glittering lights of vivacious San Francisco made imprisonment even worse. Only the hardest men did time on the Rock. Among their number were killers such as Machine Gun Kelly, Creepy Karpus, Doc Barker, Abby Butcher Modowitz, and one of the most famous crooks of all time, Al Capone. One might expect that a place with such an iniquitous roster of personalities would somehow be affected. Given the testament of so many who have set foot on Alcatraz Island and walked through what is now one of San Francisco's most visited tourist attractions, the incarcerated villains seem to have left some part of themselves behind. While many visitors have experienced a strong sense that there is more on the island than meets the eye, these feelings have rarely been positive. If supernatural phenomena truly are at work on the forlorn rock, they are not the sorts of occurrences that a person would want to experience alone. From the blood-curdling screams that have been heard late at night to the sudden crashing sounds that startle visitors in broad daylight, every inexplicable event is tingled with an energy that can only be called sinister. Different psychics who have visited the islands have sensed the spirits of different inmates, many of whom retain their vicious intentions. The spirit of Butcher Moldowitz, for example, was felt in a cell block beset by frequent reports of mysterious footsteps and harsh whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. The psychics who identify the spirit of the butcher sense that he bears no goodwill for those sightseers who casually walk through his own personal hell, and he does everything he can to keep people away. Moldowitz never made it out of Alcatraz. He was killed by a fellow inmate during a jailhouse brawl. Above the sounds of lapping water, seagulls, and visitors, some have heard the faint strains of a banjo drifting through the prison. It has been suggested that this music is performed by Al Capone, the legendary Prohibition gangster who served time in Alcatraz for tax evasion. It is difficult to imagine the disappointment Capone must have felt when he was dethroned from his criminal empire. His sudden fall into Alcatraz made him into a common hood, whose criminal fame didn't get him an iota of special treatment from the prison's stern warden, James A. Johnston. Perhaps Capone continues to pluck away at his banjo, unable to get over the unforeseen sorrow of his final days. And then there is the D Block, and what is still considered the most haunted area in Alcatraz. Horrendous tortures committed against inmates are relived. Used for solitary confinement, the block was reserved for the punishment of inmates who had transgressed jailhouse rules. Cells 9 through 14 were individually referred to as the hole because they had neither windows nor beds, and the one light bulb in the room was usually kept off. Legend has it that one convict cast into the hole was found dead in his cell a few days later, killed by some mysterious predator unknown to prison guards or fellow inmates. Today, these cells are almost always colder than the rest of the prison. Eerie wails originate in this area. More than a few visitors have run screaming from the cell block after feeling a pair of ice cold hands closing around their throats. Every year, Alcatraz receives thousands of visitors interested in seeing the legendary prison firsthand. If they're lucky enough, they might even have a supernatural experience with one of the prison's many ghosts. Meanwhile, the surrounding bay and city of San Francisco continue to shine, somehow ignoring the lonely crag in its haunted past.